The Diary of a Harlequin is proudly brought to you by Charles Stanley Wealth Managers, official player welfare partner of Harlequins. If you're looking to start your investment journey, then Charles Stanley has lots of tips and ideas on how to secure your financial future. Welcome to the Diary of a Harlequin. I'm your host, Joe Yates-Round, and today we are joined by Stephan Lewies. Now, Steph doesn't really need any introduction. Joined Quins in 2019 and is our club captain. Lifting the Premiership trophy in 2021, the formidable lock, is a key part of our recent success. This season, however, has seen a 6-week injury turn into 7 months on the sideline. And we'll talk a bit more about that and his journey in rugby. But first of all, Stephan Lewies, welcome to Diary of a Harlequin.
Hello, thanks for having me. Looking forward to having a bit of a chat and getting people to know me a little bit better.
I think that's exactly it. The purpose of this conversation is, I guess, just to find out a bit more beyond Stephan Lewies, the rugby player. But if we almost go back to the start of your rugby journey without using an awful cliche, but was rugby kind of always the end goal? Was that something that as a kid you were like, I want to be a professional rugby player, so my whole life is geared up to that?
No, not at all. I think I went to, was in primary school, obviously loved rugby. I had cousins that's 3, 6, 9 years older than me. Yeah. So everyone is older than me, so I always played ball with them in the park. And then loved rugby from a very young age. My dad played rugby, so grew up with rugby in the house, always on TV, but never really thought that's a career I could go into. So I went to a school that I think before me there was maybe one other guy that played professional rugby before me at the school. So it wasn't really like you go to a typical rugby school and you see everyone goes and play for their unions and you're like, oh, I want to be like that guy. So you never really thought like that's my career path. I always thought I'll go study, and I wanted to stay in sports. I always thought I want to do physio or chiropractor.
Okay.
And then there was a Easter festival around this time where all the schools in South Africa have Easter festivals where you play 3 games in like 5 days, which is quite mental if I have to play 3 games now. And then played well there, and then a guy after one of the games came to me, he's like, what you doing next? I'm like, well, I'm off to a next Easter festival the week after. He's like, no, next. And I still, at that time, my English wasn't the best. And this guy asked again, and I'm like, well, I don't really understand in my broken English. And he's like, do you fancy coming to play at the Sharks and play rugby? I was like, wow, I never really thought it would be an option. Wow. And then my dad said, well, they had to go to army when they were growing up for 2 years. They didn't really have a choice, so give it a shot. If it works, great. If not, then you just go back studying after that.
So rugby was almost your national service then, basically. That was your version of going to the army, was 2 years at the Sharks.
Yeah, something like that. And then obviously got there. Things worked out for me. I think a lot of luck went my way in the early part of my career. But then just rocking up there, people from bigger schools, you're almost just happy to be there. Then you make the under 19 side, happy to be there. Then under 21, then kind of got a chance. There was loads of injuries when I was 21. Yeah. I was going to leave the Sharks, go play in Italy because they didn't offer me a contract. Then loads of injuries with the senior side. When I was 21, made my Currie Cup debut, which at the time was definitely for me, a massive thing.
Yeah.
But at the time, Currie Cup was big. We went on to win the Currie Cup, was on the bench in the final, then got to stay at the Sharks. So then in your first year, go, wow, like,
yeah, you've
made it type thing.
Done a cup final, won the cup. You're like, this is 21 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Then the following year, Jake White came. He was our coach in 2014 at the Sharks. Again, I watched him 2007 World Cup winning coach. So I was quite excited to be coached by him. And then there was a team full of Springboks. I think that team had 18 Springboks in the team, the senior side. So now you're playing or you're training with guys you've always looked up to, you like your heroes, basically. You see the changing room with them, which, every day I was living my dream, basically. Then got picked for the Super Rugby side that season. played almost every game, 80 minutes, went all right. Got a chance to, then got called into a Springbok camp again. Was roommate with Skalkberger, which all my mates was buzzing around, sending.
Was that suddenly everyone finds your number again from back home?
Yeah, exactly. And then, which every day I walked in, I spent time with these people. I think it's mental because it's like I'm a rugby fan. I was a supporter. I won't be one of those guys that act like I didn't really like rugby and I kind of made it. I was a massive supporter.
So you weren't playing it cool, essentially. You weren't like, oh, hey.
No, I didn't know you like
sign this.
skittish. You're like, yeah, exactly that. You're like in all these people. And then, so then in 2014, made my debut for the Springboks. And then it's hard to then, looking back at my career, like, because I achieved a lot of things so early on, it almost happened too early. So then I got bad injuries following that. We'll get into that later. But I sometimes see it in players, like after us winning the Prem. Yeah. For young people, you achieve that, and then you always thought like, it's only going to happen at the end of your career. It happens earlier. And I think it takes special people around you to let you know this is not the end. This is still the beginning, right? So to keep that motivation, it took me a while to kick that back into gear, to stay motivated, to keep working hard. And because things just almost came too easy in the early part, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I think it's probably something that there's a lot of people that I think will identify that with. If you get that first, I don't know, taste of success at any point in life, sport, career, whatever it may be, and you go, I've done it. Oh, wow, this is brilliant. And it's about, as you say, the people around you. Did you have people that you look back on now that maybe you resented when they were telling you to kind of keep your head on your shoulders?
Yeah, definitely. I think saying like there was 18 Springboks on that side, I think they well, it happened at the end, but they were constantly saying, don't become a one-cap international, which I am today. But they were very good at keeping high standards for everyone, keep working hard, and the rest, the likes of Bismarck was a big advocate for, like, it's only the start, keep your feet on the ground. I had really good coaches, like I said earlier. Jake White was there, Brendan Fenter was there early on. It's very, really involved in Saris. Sean Everett was the coach from when I was 19, helped me along the way. So, and obviously my family, but your family is almost like they're proud of you and they're like, well done. So you almost need those other voices of come back to earth type. I won't say I ever got to my head and I was flashy and all that, but I think it does challenge your motivation. And I think the great players, the great people that achieve greatness in anything, have that internal, it's never enough. Yeah. Which I probably went through a stage where I lost a bit of motivation looking back. I won't say it was I regret it. It was a learning. Yeah. Maybe that comes in the future in business and then I'll recognize that. And you can. And for me in the position I am, when I see that in the youngsters at the club at the minute, I can be that voice for them and hopefully get them to not get stuck in that.
But I think, as you say, having experienced it, you can be that voice, but also you can be that voice in a positive sense rather than someone being like cutting across, be like, no, don't celebrate this, don't enjoy this. And it's like, no, you can enjoy, celebrate, you can have that high, but it's not the end of the journey unless you want it to be the end of the journey. And then, bye.
No, 100%. I think you need to celebrate it. Celebrate is such a big part of it. I think if you listen to some other people that achieved greatness, I've listened to some of Johnny Wilkinson's stuff, and I think he said, I might be mistaken, but he said like he regret a little bit not fully being in the moment, enjoying that, because he was always on to the next thing. So I think it's really important celebrating the victories, but then quickly realize where you have to get back to and work hard for that next goal. And in sport, there's always a next goal. There's always a next season. Yeah. So, staying motivated is a massive part of our sport.
So we're back at the Sharks. You kind of had that whirlwind first year and getting into Springboks camp and kind of living that dream. But I guess going back to that Easter camp, that was never the dream, playing at that Easter camp, right? You weren't doing that to go, God, I hope someone's watching, I get the contract. So were you kind of thinking, okay, well, I want to do sports science, medicine, the chiropractor, that sort of thing. So that was kind of the way your life was planning out at that stage.
100% was all working hard to obviously get good marks to get into university, to go study physio or chiro or trying to get back into sport eventually. I was never really crossed my mind going that was a possibility. My reality was at that stage, or at least the one I've created, was very different to the one I'm living now. So for me, every day, sometimes, even when I've thought about it, walking up here, I'm like, I'm living my dream as my childhood dream, basically. Being, amongst some of those players I looked up to, that was my heroes. I now call them my friends, which is, in itself is crazy.
And do you think that having that, almost that separation, right, that you weren't playing in those tournaments, you weren't going to school every day trying to become a Springbok, do you think that that's helped you kind of as your career's gone on to be able to let you kind of go, I'm living my dream, this is amazing, to experience that? Do you think, I guess what I'm asking is, if that pressure had been there at that stage, do you think that's something you would have welcomed, of playing in this tournament, thinking, right, this is my chance to get selected? Or do you think you'd been able to handle that, or whether that would have held you back?
I would say yes and no, in terms of, it helped me in terms of, I knew there was stuff outside of rugby. Rugby is not the be all end all. So I think it helped me to become a more rounded person, to understand rugby is not everything.
Yeah.
But the opposite is true in terms of some people that can handle that pressure. Of course, rugby is everything. They put everything into it. They're the ones I feel that reach greatness. That's
right.
The 1%ers. You obviously get the ones that's similar to me that still get to the 1%ers, but I think the ones that's more focused and they put everything into it is probably the ones that get there. So me not having that pressure, I think, helped me at that early stages. Like, I've made unbelievable friends, some that left the game early doors. The memories I have from, and which when I finished from rugby, would be unbelievable. Yeah. So being a fan while playing was interesting, but I think at stages it helped me, and at stages it probably held me back a little bit, if I have to be brutally honest.
No, interesting. So okay, so you're in the Sharks. That move to Italy doesn't happen. You go on this Currie Cup run. You're playing regular first team rugby. At that point, did you think, you said you felt like, maybe I've achieved it, and you kind of lost that motivation? What did that look like for you?
No, I won't say it's like you felt you achieved. It's like, for me in my brain, I don't have a victim mentality it was a case of, I never thought I was going to play rugby. Then you get a contract. You're like, yes.
Yeah.
Then like, okay, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go to Italy, maybe play rugby before I go to university. Then you get to play Currie Cup, and yes. Yeah. Then it's Super Rugby. You train and play, and then you Springbok. So you constantly almost reach a goal I reached something that wasn't even my goal. That was higher than some of my actual goals.
Right. Okay.
So when I reached it, I was like, wow, like you can actually do this without it. It wasn't like, I almost ticked off those goals without it being a real goal, because I didn't I wouldn't say I didn't believe in myself. I believed in myself up to a certain point. But then it took a while from that point to like, okay, you need to, if you want to make this a reality and stay here, it's easy. Like we spoke about the boys that almost kept me grounded. It's easy. They always said it's easy to get there. It's very hard to stay there. It's easy to get to the top. It's hard to stay at the top. And I think bringing that back to Quint, it was easy winning the trophy, but keep winning that. That's the hard part. That's the tricky part. And so for me, it took a while. Just that bit of realizing you've achieved, but you need to stay there is harder than getting there.
Yeah, you almost, once you've got there, you have to work even harder to maintain 100%. It. Doing nothing or carrying on means you're only going to drop off, and it's going to be fast, right? So what happened 100%. Then next? Then after that high, after you say you had that those realizations of that you needed to kind of get back on the get back on the horse and kind of really work for it. Like, how did Quins come into the picture for you? Because that was 2019. You came over to
Quins. So there was A lot of things happened between 2014 and then 2019. Ended up going to Japan before coming to Quins, which was an unbelievable experience. And then I always wanted to play in Europe, come overseas. I thought England would be easy. There won't be a language barrier, which I quickly found out I struggled to understand the English being spoken here. But so Quins needed a second row when Guzzy was here. One of my old coaches at the Sharks played with Guzzy at the time. So he kind of put my name forward. Ryan Strudwick, he played for London Irish as well. And basically, I think I got lucky. So I got a contract at Harlequins. To be honest, I wasn't too picky where I go in terms of England. So when the opportunity came up for me to go to Quins, which is a massive name, a club that there's Harlequins rugby clubs in South Africa.
Yeah.
I actually played against Quins when I was 8 years old, but then when I was at the Sharks, my club that I was affiliated with was Quins as well.
Okay.
So it was actually quite a cool story. But then when the opportunity came up to play for a London club, for me, one of the biggest clubs in world rugby, no one's going to say no to that.
No. And before we get on to life at Quins, that time in Japan must have been, you said you wanted to come to England because of the lack of language barrier. Why on earth did you go to Japan? I don't see many correlations in Afrikaans and Japanese.
Well, I enjoyed traveling. I love traveling, experiencing different cultures and seeing the world. And rugby gives you the opportunity to move around, experience different cultures. And Japan, it was almost at that time, there was lots of people, not as many as now, but people started going to Japan and you started hearing good stories. The money is obviously good as well. And the opportunity came up for me to go. Yeah. And it was a stage where you could play Super Rugby instead of Currie Cup, you'd go. So you'd still be 6 months in South Africa playing Super Rugby and then 6 months in Japan. So when took the opportunity and unbelievable from a cultural experience. And
so did you love it out there?
Yeah, I was in a little town 6 hours outside Tokyo, the town that got hit by the tsunami in 2011.
Oh, wow.
So when I was there in 2017-18, the town was still rebuilding from the tsunami back then, which was quite sad and humbling to see. But yeah, the food in Japan is amazing. The people, it's almost like a different planet for me coming from South Africa going to Japan. The amount of people it's hard to get your head around it, but it was crazy.
And an amazing experience, I imagine, to have again ticked off the list of goals you maybe didn't realise was a goal living out there. Did you find, aside from the food, did you find that there was a big adjustment in that kind of way of living from going to South Africa to Japan, or did the rugby kind of provide a constant in that?
No, the rugby definitely helped. I think we're lucky. I think sometimes the hardest thing about moving is with your family and your partner, because when you're with a rugby club, you go in there, you make connections, mates, quite easily. You have conversations with different people. There's immediately something that we have in common, and it's a rugby piece. Where your partner at home, they don't have that constant, they don't have that in always. So that's the hard part, I think, about rugby and moving around. But the language was obviously a tough. I couldn't speak Japanese, and in that small town, a very few, if any, people outside of the rugby could really speak English. So it was constantly on Google Translate trying to either take pictures and translate to read or to speak to people. Which was interesting. But I learned a lot about myself in that 6 months, that year's time, being on my own in a new country, which was a cool experience.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of, I guess, gave you that taste then, I guess, almost for wanting to push your own boundaries, live somewhere else, experience something different. So you came to the UK, you admit not being overly picky, but Quins is a name that you saw in a bit. You're like, yeah, I know who that is. I kind of fancy being a part of that. What did you find then when you kind of joined Quins in 2019? Obviously, it was a strange period because not many months later we ended up in lockdowns and that COVID period. For you, for your partner, kind of coming over at that time, how was the club to you, kind of as fresh eyes walking in?
Yeah, the club was amazing coming over, helping me settle in. I think Andy Sanger. I think a lot of boys would tell you he's the glue at the club, but from picking me up at the airport and helping with the visas, the club, but they were amazing from day one, helping me looking for places to stay and helping with cars. So in terms of settling in, it was really off the pitch was amazing. I think they went above and beyond, and they still do with players coming here. I think that's what makes this club special, is they care about the individuals, the people. I think a lot of clubs say that, but actually living that is a different, or doing that's a different, totally different ball game. And employing someone to do that, like Andy, to look after the people as individuals, mentally, physically, outside their families, makes a massive difference. And then the rugby part at first was challenging. First 2 games, I got 2 yellow cards in 2 games. Not a great start to my Quins career. I think it was the subtle rule or the laws that they ref different in the UK.
Oh, yeah. We'll blame the subtle
Can't
rules
be me.
sure.
It has to be the refs, obviously. But yeah, the rugby, immediately it was you into the winter months, quite soon into the season, and then the rugby was physical at first. There was definitely a change because it's slower than Super Rugby, but very much more confrontational. And I think the way we played under Ghazi was also that type of style.
Yeah.
If I have to compare it now, it's probably the way we play is not always that physical because we move the ball a lot. But back then we kicked a lot. A lot of it was up front and it was really physical.
And did you enjoy that new challenge then? I guess that's probably something that you were seeking out with moving to the UK, that physicality. Did you like that, or did you kind of think, oh, no, that's maybe not exactly what I had in mind?
No, I loved it. I played for the Sharks was there for 9 years. So a change was needed and was good for me, not for me personally, but for my career as well. I think I hit a little bit of a plateau at the Sharks. Me and the coach at the time probably didn't get as along in the rugby context as well as we should have. So the move came at a really good time for me, mentally and off the pitch, but on the pitch as well. And then learning from different players, new coaches, adding to my game when I got here. It was exciting, and every day wanted to go to work to learn, and it was a fresh feeling where at the Sharks at one stage I lost that love for the game a little bit towards the end. Still love the union, still try and watch every Sharks game, but just towards the end, it's probably more a reflection on me than on the Sharks. But
but that happens, doesn't it? When you're somewhere for a extended period of time, if it doesn't evolve and change necessarily the way you would like, which you're not always in control of, you can kind of find yourself drifting and being like, this isn't where I want to be anymore. Is that would that be fair to say of the Sharks?
I think I still had the passion. Was just frustrated at the time at how things was being done at the union. Like you say, you don't always in control, and sometimes it's a good thing you're not in control. But so the change was really good from that to the Quins and this environment where you can be yourself, you can express yourself. I think a lot of people worry about that when you come overseas, the different culture and the different banter and the language barrier and the food. But it was made really easy by this team.
And I think that's something that has come up a few times in the conversation we've had on this podcast, is that idea that at Quins everyone's encouraged to be themselves. And obviously we'll come on to it, but you now find yourself as the captain of this club. Is that kind of a belief that you hold really kind of close to your heart in terms of empowering and allowing everyone to be individuals in a team environment?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's important. I think the more people can be themselves and express themselves, you see them and be comfortable in their own skin off the pitch and being happy off the pitch. You see that on the pitch as well, them expressing themselves, playing with. We often talk about smiles on faces. So I think the more you can create that environment off the pitch where people can have smiles on their faces when they actually take the pitch, you get better people off the pitch, but you also get better rugby players on the pitch. So it's definitely encouraged, not just by me, but by the team. And I think it's not this team of Quins, it's something that's come with the Quins badge for a very long time.
And I think that's a really interesting point that you're aware of, right? That this is not about how you want Stephan Lewies' time at Harlequins to be remembered. It's about what it means to be a Harlequin in a broader sense, right? And that enjoyment, that smiles on faces. And is that smiles on faces something that you've ever encountered kind of in your rugby playing career before coming here?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people talk about it, but once again, actual resources at Quins goes into making that happen.
Right.
Time set out for it. So there's barbecues after trainings, the families here today coming to training with their kids, there's face paint, there's activities to keep the kids involved, keep the family involved in the club. All that is actual money being spent to keep their or get smiles on faces. I think our fans, we haven't even got to them, but you see how they love this place, and for the last 2 seasons we have sold out stadiums. So it all just adds to the environment and getting those smiles on faces. So I think there's resources that's put into it at this club that at other places they definitely talk around it, but I don't always see money being put on the table to invest on that smiles on faces.
Interesting. And actually, as you say, making it a organisational priority.
Yeah,
right?
You have to make it a priority, otherwise it's just lip service.
Yeah, and there's no use saying to, I don't know, players who saying maybe someone's just moved to the country, go, right, come on, play with a smile on your face. Like, well, hang on, I don't know where my wife's working, I don't know which school my kids are going to, but having that support allows you to do that and take
100%.
on Saturday. So then not long after arriving, obviously, COVID, lockdowns, 2021 comes around the corner and a Premiership win on the horizon. Obviously, not to have known that at that point, but equally for you, you become club captain here at this club. Is that something that, again, was it a goal that you'd set, or is it another one of those ones that you're like, it wasn't even my goal to be captain, and now here I am leading these guys? How did that come about for you as a conversation with the coaches and equally, I mentioned the playing group as well?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that just happened again. I think so Guzzy phoned me one day and is like, I want to make you captain. Is it something you'd be keen to do, take on? And I've been at a union before where someone new comes in and been made captain, and the players doesn't really buy into that person. So I had that experience myself. So I knew it would be impossible to lead this team without the backing of the senior players. Yeah. So I said, I'll get back to you in a few days, not because I don't want it, but I need to speak to the players. So I've spoke to Danny, Brownie, Marla at the time. It might have been one other. But I know I definitely spoke to the three of them. All three said, we back you 100%. Danny said he had a crack at it. Marla had a crack at it before, so they think it's good. That they don't want another crack. It's hard work. So, yeah, for me it was a massive honour, obviously, getting the opportunity to lead a club with so much history. But I also knew, I had a lot of learning to do. I had to develop a lot. I wasn't the finished product or captain in a long way. I had to do a lot of development to become the captain probably needed for this team. And over the time, I would say I did a lot. I'm way off still. I think you constantly have to evolve and get better as a leader. Yeah. But I think in that initial season, 2 seasons, a lot happened personally in terms of my development. And I've always said it's not a one-man job. The boys I've spoken to, the spine as we call it, the leaders in the group's been amazing. The help and support. I think we lead as a group. It's not... I constantly, or a lot of times I like club captain. I'm like, well, it's a team effort. It's not really a one-man show. And I think it shows on the pitch as well.
But I think that's interesting as well, that was your response to being asked that, right? In terms of the style of the type of leader you are. Because it would be very easy to on the phone have gone, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be the club captain. But you're like, well, if I'm going to do it, I don't want to do it for one season and it to be a disaster. I want to have the buy-in of the boys. I need the senior boys on side. I need everyone to then sign up and commit to it, and then equally to involve a leadership group so that there's that shared collective responsibility, as well as recognising that you yourself had to develop. So I think that's a really fascinating answer to that question. And I guess my question on the back of that is, was there any nervousness? Like once, okay, you got the buy-in from the boys, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to say yes to this. Like, are you somebody who engaged in those thoughts of what if this goes wrong? What if I can't do it? That not quite imposter syndrome, but that sort of idea of like, okay, I want to step forward, but what if it doesn't go the way I want it to?
No, I never really thought of what could go wrong, to be honest. I just thought straight away jump to what I can do to make it better, or and what I need to get from my side to push the group forward. So then we first game against Exeter, I think we got 40 at home, so it wasn't a perfect start. But yeah, no, I never thought about the negative part of it. I always thought about what's possible and what's needed to make the dream come true.
But which is telling, I guess, from your own experiences, right? As a young player, kind of breaking into that team, having it all sort of happen for you very, very quickly. You've got that grounding of, you know, the important voices that were there for you to kind of keep you grounded. But equally, you've experienced that runaway success. You know, when times are right, the joy that can be felt. Do you think that those experiences made you the right candidate for captain straight away?
Yeah, I think those experiences helped me massively. Having good leaders in the past, great captains. Keegan Daniels, one of the best captains, still a friend till today. I learned a lot from him as how to be a good captain. And then also I had captains that I didn't believe in and it was hard to follow. So I had both examples, how I wanted to be and how I also, which I think is important, how you don't want to be, to steer clear of those things. I always thought I'll go into or stay in sport after rugby. So from a young age, I made notes of captains and coaches of things that I think would work going forward and things that equally I need to remember I shouldn't do, which have a bad outcome or bad effect on people as a whole. So I think that's helped me. Almost looking that far ahead has helped me with being a captain, knowing what's worked in the past for not just myself but at teams, and also what have we done in the past that didn't work, and almost steering away from that.
And then have you got people outside of Quins, maybe even outside of sport, that you talk to about that idea of leading people? Because you seem very articulate on it, very interested in kind of the psychology behind it and the practices of it as well. So I wonder if they're people that you refer to away from the game to go, okay, this is something I'm experiencing. How would you solve that or approach that away from the rugby pitch?
Yeah, well, Andy at the club is probably my biggest mentor. I speak to him daily and leading, and with his experience in the army and all the rest, he's probably the number one. But then the likes of Keegan that's done the previous captains, and having people that's sat in that change room that's done it before me, to lean on them and get advice from him, or people like that and previous coaches that help. I'm doing my Masters of Sport Directorship at the minute, so the whole first unit was on leadership and leading, which actually helped a lot.
Very helpful, yeah.
And then through that course, you meet a lot of people and bounce ideas of different sport, of football and Olympic sport. So, and I love reading books like that as well. So learn a lot from reading and that. But I think, like I say, if you just stay the same person or the same captain, you'll lose the squad eventually because you'll slowly move backwards. So it's constantly finding new ways to engage people, to keep them interested, and keep them engaged and listening to help lead them, driving this club forward.
It's all right. So, okay, so let's go back to Quins, that timeline. You become captain, Exeter just put 48 points, whatever it was at home. That's behind closed doors at that point as well, right? So there's no fans. Yeah, that was...
The first. You're right.
Yes, behind closed doors. Like, that's obviously a pretty potent cocktail to be thrown in as your first season as club captain, and with that leadership group around you. And then loads went on to happen over the course of that season. Was there a moment that you look back on, having now won the Premiership, where it became clear that was on the cards for that group of players?
In terms of...
In that season, at what point did you as the captain, whether you were sharing it or not,
start believing?
Like, I think we're onto something here.
I think when Ghazi left at the time, I think you had a lot of people frustrated and almost felt like they were boxed in, caged in players. So when we took the shackles off, we made the game plan really simple, but we allowed people to express themselves. And we gave people a voice. Like when we say in that leadership group, people came to the table with plans and they were driving those plans with the coaches. And whenever as a player you put something on the table in terms of a plan, you want to make it happen, you want it to work, because otherwise So the players' input was, the coaches was brilliant with that, taking that on board and then facilitated training around that. And then it almost, the combination with the players and the coaches driving the messages together. It wasn't just the coaches and the players like a divide. It was very together. And then we got that first result against Wasp away, which was really good. I think everyone written us off at that time, which I think helped because people, when they just lost their head coach, they're going to crumble eventually. So we got the win. Then we got another win. And then we did, like, those comebacks was mental in that season. Marcus, I think, and Thomas saved us a few games in a row there. Yeah. And then you slowly start winning and you see it's a possibility. And I think slowly, we didn't really talk about it, but the belief was just building slowly until there was a stage where like, okay, we're in the mix here. Then you start having those conversations. Yeah. But for a long time, we just took it game by game.
And I think it's interesting. That's, you hear that. It's a cliche because it's true often in sport, right? That game by game mentality doesn't really help to get too carried away as a whole group when you've still got a lot to achieve. But then when you realise you're in the mix, right? Okay, so, knockout rugby starts to come on the horizon. Are you looking around the squad at those leaders you mentioned, Joe, Danny, Brownie, they've been there and they've done it. How much were you chatting to them about their experiences of 2012 within this group? It's obviously a lot of water gone under the bridge at the club since then, but there was still that history and that heritage of having done it.
So one thing I asked Danny to stand in front of the group and share his experience of winning it in 2012, but then also waiting 9 years to get an opportunity to do it again. Similar to myself winning the Currie Cup in my first year.
Yeah.
And then after, when was that? 2014. Since then, or before the Prem, I haven't won anything again. So I was like, we have a team full of young players, but I don't really think they understand how big this is, the opportunity to play in a semi and a final and then lifting this cup. So I thought for us, getting over the line, they need to understand how big this is. And sometimes it's good having these youngsters because they don't feel any pressure. They go out there, it's like in the park, throw the ball. They don't get pressure of the kick or the pass. They just do it, which was great. Yeah. But I think it was equally important to tap into these players' past experience, to share this knowledge and actually getting them, or us as a group, to understand how difficult it is to get into a Prem final.
Yeah.
I think our physio showed a stat the other day. It's like a 0.000 something chance of one playing and winning a Premiership final. So I think once Danny stood up and it actually ignited a little bit of extra fire in the boys, understanding how big it is.
And I think how big it is generally, but do you think the boys understanding how big it is for their teammates as well? You talk about those young guys that maybe have no fear, but then they're playing with Danny, and I guess they must look at him the same way you were looking at some of those Springboks and you broke into the team, like, oh, he's done it, he's amazing, he's my hero. And he's talking about the fire that he's got in his belly to go and do it again 9 years on, that they sort of go, oh, it's not about me winning it, it's about Danny winning, it's about Joe winning, it's about Brownie winning, it's Steph winning it again. Do you think that played into it at all?
No, it's definitely, and it was inspiring when he was like talking to us about his experience. Mostly his biggest motivation was the piss up after winning the final. That was his reason for trying to win it a second time. But yeah, I think it almost made people think why they want to win it. And if there's a chance to do it now, then let's do everything in our power to achieve it now, because you can always think next year, but the next year might not come. I think it's a lot like they've learned already. It's a lot harder than just thinking, oh, next year we're going to walk into a semi-final and then you're in a final. And because that's kind of when you're at that age, how you think things happen, and it doesn't. Yeah. So to have these players telling you, listen, or having them as examples helps a lot.
And do you think that sometimes it's important to put the emotion back into situations? You read a lot, you hear a lot, see a lot of people saying, right, in order to be successful, you've got to take the emotion out of it, you've got to do your process, and yes, there's merit in that, but actually when there's something on the line that is tangible emotionally, that it's important to inject that at the right time as a leader when you think people need a bit of fire lit underneath.
No, massively. I think emotion, you can't take emotion out of sport as much as you want to. I think there's times you want to take it or bring it down or take it up. But emotion is there. You can't help it. In a final, you have emotion. When you lose, you have emotion. So you can never say I know people say it, but it's impossible. I think you're lying to yourself when you say you take emotion fully out of it, because you can control emotion. I agree with that, but taking it off the table, I think that's impossible. So at the right times, using emotions to get people up or to perform to their full potential, it's a powerful tool. And equally, bringing that emotion down sometimes to calm people down is equally as important.
And then you mentioned that Danny's main motivation that you shared was about the piss up after the win. I'm sure, and I hope very much we'll get the chance to ask him on the podcast, but from speaking to him, was it better than he anticipated for 2021, better than 2012? I mean, you don't want to compare the two. Not the final, I mean the piss up afterwards.
I don't know about the piss up. I think he said the win for him was better in 2021 because he understood, again, like our previous conversation, he understood how hard it is. And because at 09, he was that young kid that rocked up, won a Premiership easy. I'm going to do this next year, and it didn't happen for 9 years. So he understood how big it was. Yeah. But in terms of the piss up, I didn't sleep for 3 days. So for me, it was definitely my best celebration. And hopefully I get to do it again, because honestly, the memories you have, will live with me forever.
Wow, 3 days of no sleep. That's impressive.
Well, 2 days without sleep. After the final, went straight through to the team social on the Sunday. Then had a bit of sleep on the Sunday. Actually slept at Andre's house, and his boy Liam woke me up at 6 a.m. in the morning, which was great. So kept on playing with Liam. But then got back on it on the Monday.
I mean, it sounds fantastic, and let's hope we get some more to look forward to with you in the quarters and at the club. I want to move on now past that, because it's a few years ago now. There's lots been said and lots been written about that win, and I know that as sportsmen you're always looking forward. But I guess looking back on your career, you mentioned about the injuries you experienced out in South Africa. I mentioned about the injury kind of you've just come back from in the introduction. I guess that's part of rugby, right? That that it's a sport where there's going to be injuries. Do you find that you're better at being injured at this point in your career, or are you more frustrated at this point in your career than you were in those early years when you picked up those injuries?
I think I'm better equipped or emotionally to handle the injuries and the lows, but I think you go through ups and downs with every injury where you better understand it's part of the game and it happens. But I think now towards the end, I think it frustrates me more, because when I was younger, I knew you're young, you still have a long career left, so it's fine. Where now I know there's not that much longer left, so every time you get injured and you're off the pitch for a long time, you're missing out on. You never know when's your last game in the sport anyways, but you're one step closer to that last game, which frustrates me more, not being on the pitch, if I have to be honest.
No, I bet. And then this current injury, it's kind of a really protracted time out. I said at the start, like, it was meant to be 6 weeks and it turns into 7 months. Like, mentally, what kept you going? I imagine your masters that you're doing at the moment played a big part, but like, how did you kind of keep sane in that period where it was, because maybe for the people listening, it might be useful just to explain kind of what happened, because a lot of it was out of your control as well, right? Yeah,
I think the thing that helped me was, so to go back, the injury itself, I had in 2015, I snapped my patella tendon, so they had to reattach my patella tendon, and then they put 3 pins into my kneecap, and then, so my body didn't, from what I understand, and don't quote my medical terms, but fully didn't accept the foreign bodies in my knee. So I had a low grade infection for a long time, and then last season the infection got worse and worse and worse. So I actually got a bad infection. Then I got put on antibiotics I think I was on antibiotics for 3 months.
Wow.
So the tough thing was, sometimes you wake up, you feel great. Other days I had nothing in me, and then one of the days I felt the worst was big game last year. I remember waking up thinking, I'm going to play a rugby game today, just feeling like no energy, and then you try and get up, and I think that's the hard thing. Often the crowd don't know what's going on.
So you were basically dealing with that on a low level since 2015, but it kind of came to a head while you were playing.
Yeah, it like came and it went and came and went. Then low grade, like a real low grade infection, and often made it was like a cyst on my knee, which I would often just drain it myself and it's grim, but get the pus out on a daily basis. In the beginning, it was like once a week, and then or once a month, and then weekly, and then it became a point where it was just daily. I had to like get the stuff out of my knee, and then so the thing was, I felt constantly drained and tired. I got ill probably every second week. I was sick, like I had a cold because my immune system was so low. And then there was a point in the season where I went back to South Africa, came back and tried to train, and ended up in hospital on a drip. And that's when they actually found out, okay, you have quite a serious infection. Wow. So they said the infection won't get any worse. We can keep it stable. I said, well, I want to finish the season, or try at least finish the season. Got to the semi-final, got to the end. We didn't get across the line at the time. Then went for the op. But then straight after the op, I felt when the infection was gone, I felt I had energy. I felt a lot better. So from that, I think that helped me being positive, because outside of rugby, I felt a million times better. It was, even if they had to tell, okay, you're done with rugby now because of this injury, which at some stage it almost felt that way, it's fine, because I feel I can have energy when I'm at home or with my friends or with my family, where previously I would be
because you were kind of putting your body through it just to play rugby, so you kind of had nothing left outside of the sport. Really.
Yeah, maybe looking back a little bit, but I just think that probably while you're in it, you don't really realize how bad it was. So only after, when it was gone, I was like, I feel this much better. You almost see how much I was struggling with the infection. So that kept me going in terms of the energy levels and just feeling normal again throughout my injury. But then making ready for 6 to 8 weeks, and then it turns into months. That was a bit of a low point.
And so was that just various different setbacks on the way with that was it linked to the infection, or was it?
So in the infection, I had to drill into my kneecap to get those anchors out, because it's done its job. They didn't really have a purpose anymore. So then into my rehab, I fractured my kneecap. So it was a fracture line straight through. So then that's where the 7 months came in, and then it was, they couldn't, or the option is either leave it, hope it gets better by itself, heal over time and do the bare minimum, or you go for another op where they put like wire, like a figure through, or figure of 8 through the kneecap. So I didn't really want to do that, because probably that would be in my knee for, I don't know, probably a lifetime. So I was like, let's take the chance on not doing anything, and then constantly going for scans every second month or so to see how it's going. And then, the rehab team was great. I think the support staff at Quins is great to change things up. I did some stuff up in Liverpool to get off site, and went home every now and then. So that really helped me through the process. And then I try to stay as much as involved in the meetings and stuff, and try and help. I think it's really hard as a captain leading off when you're not on the pitch. So try and be a support to Domers and the boys, do as much as I can to help them on the pitch. Yeah, I think that engagement also helped me.
Because that must be it's one thing to be injured as a player, but when you're the captain of that group, I know you said there's the leadership group that is so important, but sometimes you need to look to the captain for the instruction, or to set the tone or something. Like, how did you find that process of being involved but not then being able to go out on the training pitch or going out and playing with them on a Saturday?
Look, because we're such a good senior group, and I think we as a leadership group complement each other really well. So I think it's been a huge help in the past 2 seasons, where whenever I drop off Domers or Danny or whoever it may be steps up and fill that gap, and then I just try and be as much support for them off the pitch. But like you say, sometimes you need to be leading by example, and if you can't do that, it's really, really hard to lead. And I think credit to the group. They've been brilliant and helping me through those tough times, understanding it, and not just being easy to lead, but being there for me as well.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways, doesn't it? It's one that you're not just a leader up on a pedestal, you're part of the group as well. So having that feeling you've got that support must be quite encouraging when you're out on that time and spending that time away from it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think all the players in this group feel the same when they're injured or out of not playing, they feel supported. That's obviously the environment we want to create. And I can obviously say for myself, I definitely felt that way. Very well supported through that time of my injury, but also as a leader, the way they've stuck with me, I really appreciate it.
And then, okay, let's move away from Harlequins per se and kind of a bit more onto you. You've heard about kind of your that journey, those highs, those lows, kind of moving around Japan, England. But then for you personally, one question we like to ask on the podcast here is: are you in your personal life financially? Are you a spender or a saver? Are you somebody that's out there, the money's burning a hole in your pocket every month, or are you kind of protecting it, putting some away, making sensible decisions in inverted commas?
I think from a young age, I had good people around me that said, like, rugby is a short career. You have to make the most out of it, look after your money. So I think majority of the time I'm a saver. I look after my money, but I think I have a good balance. Nice. Sometimes it probably flips the wrong way a little bit, but I have good people around me to quickly get me back on the right track. So as in a whole, probably a saver, but every now and then I spoil myself and sometimes get it wrong, maybe too much. But yeah, I think there's always an end goal in mind.
Yeah, but sometimes you allow yourself to let your hair down. And
definitely, I think I enjoy good food.
Yeah.
And yeah, nice holidays is probably food and holidays is probably the thing I spend on it the most.
Yeah,
I would say experiences.
Experiences. You're not one for physical things, but like you said, even like Japan with traveling the world, like that's what you'd say kind of your extravagances then is going away. What's the best trip that you've taken, would you say?
Best trip. Turkey was amazing, got engaged there, so it's up
pretty
there.
Good, yeah.
Cappadocia was incredible, obviously because I got engaged as well. I haven't really traveled that much as much as I would have liked in Europe. Came over, that was one of the main reasons coming over to travel. But then COVID happened and believe it or not, visas has been a nightmare. As a South African, the green mamba doesn't help you. So that's probably the best one I've done, but looking forward in the near future to do a lot more over here.
Exciting. Okay, and then, look, I could sit talking to you for hours and hours, Steph, but I will get to the final question. But firstly, thank you for coming and chatting. It's been really illuminating, for me, but hopefully for people listening to kind of learn a bit more about who you are and your journey. But the question I want to ask to wrap up is, we've talked about some of those low moments, right? When times are tough, whether it be injury or just generally in life. How do you continue to find joy or to kind of bring yourself back out of those moments? I wouldn't say necessarily happiness, it's not the be all and end all, but like finding that joy to kind of keep going.
I think one, knowing your why you wake up in the morning, why you do stuff, and then surrounding myself with good people. I think my friends and my family is everything for me. Spending time with my wife, I think that's probably the thing that gives me the most joy, is spending quality time with my family and my friends. I think as long as I have them around me and I can see them regularly and do cool things with them, I'm happy. Whether there's life's always going to be happening. There's going to be highs and there's lows, but as long as I can share those experiences with them, whether it's up or down, I think I'm all right.
Fantastic. Steph, thank you very much for coming on the Diary of a Harlequin.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and thank you for giving me the time to have people getting to know me a bit better.